That's a great looking sock right there, right? Well, this sock is actually made to fit my daughter, and it's not the cast on and it's not the yarn that's used in this book right here. So we're going to be working with this Sock Loom Basics book from Leisure Arts. Thank you so much to Leisure Arts. We're going to be working it on a knitting loom, and we're actually changing the loom and changing the yarn from the actual pattern. I'm going to take you through how to make this one, but I'm also going to take you through not only how to make the heel without picking up and wrap and turns and how to seam in that inseam, but I'm also going to take you through how to custom fit your sock, whether you're making this one or you're making something else. So in the very beginning, we're actually going to go through and learning how to customize a sock for your needs or your friend or family member or whoever you're making it for to be exactly what they want, and they're going to enjoy those socks for a long time to come. So grab your notes and your pen and a drink of coffee, tea, or whatever, and join me right now. Be sure and save this video too.
Welcome to GoodKnit Kisses. We're all about helping you stitch your love and love your stitches.
All right, so we're ready to start. We need to know some of the basic things for this video. First things first, be sure and click on the link in the description down below, and you can see where to get this book that I'm talking about, which has the pattern, but also the sock calculator. There's going to be some critical things in there that are going to be great for you to save and bookmark that site to go back to. There's also some charts for you for averages on socks, so that if you don't know your friends' sizes or whatever, or maybe it's a surprise, you can kind of get the basic notes if you know their size of their shoes. So there's that too. All right, so I'm going to go over a few housekeeping things. One is the book. We're working with the Sock Loom Basics book from Leisure Arts. Thank you so much, Leisure Arts. We are working the horizontal rib tippy toe sock pattern. It's this one on the back. This is a picture of it here. And I'm going to tell you what they've used here so that you can get the yarn if you want. But I'm also going to tell you what I'm using. So they are using the old version of the sock loom, which is a little bit smaller gauge. They're also using a super fine one yarn. They're using 332 yards of fingering weight yarn. Peyton's Croy socks in aqua jacquard was used in the sample. You're also going to need a knitting tool, tapestry needles, 2 pieces of color contrasting yarn, each about 10 inches long for closing the toe. Now that's optional, so you don't have to use that. And it tells you also the gauge that they got. They also use the sock loom, the first sock loom. This is the sock loom 2. This is a small gauge loom. This means from one peg to the next, the center of the peg to the center peg, it's 3/8 of an inch. And this is called an SG or small gauge loom. I am working with actually number 2 yarn. This yarn is picked because my daughter wanted to use it. Thank you so much to Lion Brand, because this is from them. This is called Ice Cream, and the color is Tutti Frutti. So that's what she wanted to pick, and we're going to use that, and I could probably get several socks out of this. So this one's actually an all acrylic yarn. It's 100% acrylic, so it doesn't have that extra stretch with nylon. It's not technically a sock yarn, but that's what's great about this video. I'm going to teach you how to change the loom, change the yarn, and make it your own. All right, let's get right into some of the other measurement tools you're going to need. You're going to want to take some measurements of the foot you're going to make it for, or you can use some of our charts. If you're going to take those measurements, you should get some cotton yarn and use it to help measure around stuff, because it's rigid and it won't stretch too far. You can also use a tape measure that bends and flex like this. If you're making it for yourself, you may need someone's help, because what you want to do is you'll rest your foot, pretend this is your foot, and it's going to sit on the ground with your weight on it. Now, not on your tippy toe, but you're going to put your weight right on it. And this part here, when it's flat, about right here, that's the widest part of your foot. That's the part of the foot that we're going to measure. You're also going to want to measure the leg, or the length that you're going to want this cuff to come up to at the top. So from here to about here, you're going to want to measure where the sole's going to be. So from the heel all the way to the toe. So those measurements are going to help you for later, and we'll go over those as well. You're going to need a ruler, and that's for measuring some gauge, and I think I've covered most everything else. The only other thing I would add is I think that a row counter is helpful for you, or you can take notes and mark off on the side. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump into some of these notes. All right, jumping right into the pattern. On this version, it's on page 32, but yours may be a different page for a different version. This is the horizontal rib tippy toe socks. We've already covered the materials in the beginning of the video, and then you see the horizontal rib pattern. This is not the whole pattern. So with all patterns, you want to read through the entire thing first. So you actually need to flip on to the other side to complete this pattern, and then it moves on to the next one. So the main instructions for this pattern is here, and then you'll see it refer to the horizontal rib pattern and do it a certain number of times. So you refer back to this page here, which is just a quick layout of what you need. The first thing you need to notice about this, though, is a multiple of 3 plus 1. This is important when you're changing the yarn, whether you're using a number 1 yarn, the exact same that's mentioned, and even the same loom. Your gauge may be a little bit different, and so you might need to adjust the amount of cast on stitches to adjust for your size as well. And you're going to need to know some of this stuff to make some changes. So of course we're using a number 2 weight, and we're changing the loom a little bit too. So jumping over to this other page here, it says that this size fits a size 8.5 foot circumference, and you can see the sizing on page 7. We'll jump over there in a minute. And then it talks about the cast on is 52 pegs using the cable cast on, and you can see the cast on page 3. Now you can use whatever cast on you want to do. I actually used the long tail cast on, and I really still prefer it. This one, I have not cleaned up the edges. I actually like to clean up the edges a little bit on the loom. When it's a smaller gauge, it ends up being a little bit loopier, but I can pull it through, so I'll show you how to do that. You can use whichever one you prefer to cast on with, and that is not something we're going to cover here. So I'm assuming you already know how to knit and purl and cast on and work in the round. So you're going to work 1 row in a knit stitch, okay? And then you work with the cuff, and then you work the leg, the heel, the foot, and the toe. Let's go over those right here. So we're just going to get some basics of working with a sock. So you have your cuff, which is this part up here. Then you have the leg right here. Then you have the heel, and then this is the foot, and then here you have the toe. And again, this is not finished at this moment. I just wanted to have it on here so you can see it beyond just a plain board here. So the cuff is the part we're going to be working first. This is a top-down construction, not toe-up. Okay, so this construction starts with the cuff, and the book actually will show you a couple of different ways to do it. But this particular pattern starts with a ribbed cuff, and you work for 1 inch. Then you work the leg section, and you're going to repeat the rounds 1 through 13 of the horizontal rib pattern, which is on the other side, which is 13 rounds. And then you do that 4 times, and then repeat rounds 1 through 4 once more. Okay, and then you make the heel. Okay, let's just stop for there. So in order to do this, you need to make sure your sock is going to fit first, right? So we want to go ahead and make a swatch, and what that's going to do is it's going to help us know how many stitches to cast on, but also this length here. If your yarn produces a bigger stitch than this yarn and this loom here, then your sock is going to be too big if we use the same amount of stitches. Okay, so in all these rows here, if we did this sock the way the other one is, this sock is going to be too long. It's actually going to have too many repeats. So I'm going to show you some of the math of how I worked on that, and we'll also cover the part about the foot, and is actually made up of the sole, which is the bottom of the foot, the toe down here, and then this is actually the instep here. Okay, so all right, let's move on, and we'll go into sizing. All right, so we've got the sizing area over here, and we just talked about your foot here. You've got, this is the foot, okay, and then we have the leg, which is made up of the cuff, okay, and then you have your heel, and then you have your toe, and then if you want to get really specific, the top part is the instep. And then this is the sole, which is the bottom. okay? But the main thing you need is this part right here, okay? And that part is around your foot. So like this is a foot standing, and you got this foot here, and these are our little toes. Anyway, we're going to measure this part here, okay, all the way around. Okay, we're measuring around the foot, all right? And then that measurement is what is determined for our cast on. So my size, let's see, women's 9. Okay, that's for my daughter. She wears a 9. Yeah, she's got big feet. So when we measure her, we're going to measure her standing. Okay, measurement. Pardon my handwriting. So the ball of her foot is 8.75 inches. Okay, and then I also measured the length to the toe. So this is the measurement when she's standing. I went from the heel to the toe, and I measured that length there. So that's the longest amount to knit there. So we've got the length to toe, and it was 10.25 inches. Okay, and then we had her desired height. Now usually this is going to be, and it actually is stated in the pattern here, from the cuff down to where the heel is about 6 to 8 inches. So a short sock would be about 6 and a long one would be about 8. So I measured where she wanted it. So her desired height is actually it's kind of in between 6 and 8, so we're just going to say that's what it was. So then what I need the second thing is the swatch gauge. So you've already got this stuff. You haven't needed to do much other than measure. 2 is you're going to measure your swatch gauge. Okay, to do that, you're going to need to cast on to your loom. You're going to cast on however you want to, and then you're going to work a regular stockinette piece just like this. Okay, so this piece actually is about 14 stitches wide. I really think that should be about 20 to 30 stitches. So you could just go all the way across here. You're going to knit about, this is actually 20 rows. I'd say maybe even 30 rows. The bigger you can make it, the more accurate your measurement. Then you want to measure across 2 inches and write that many stitches down. Okay, and then I divide that by 2 in order to get how many stitches in an inch. And then you're going to want to measure vertically for rows. So we're going to get our hard measuring tool here, our ruler. You go across and you measure and count how many stitches in that area, and then up and down is how many stitches in that area. Before you actually measure, or you could take 2 measurements before it's washed and after it's washed, that's fine. But I suggest washing this swatch. You can block it or whatever, but however you would normally wash these socks later on, if you're going to be throwing them in the wash and dryer and that particular yarn can do that, I suggest doing that with your swatch and then measuring it, because you'll know exactly the right size that it's going to be, whether it's going to grow or it's going to shrink. So write those numbers down. So my swatch gauge is 5.5 stitches, S is stitches, by 7.5 rows in 1 inch. So if you had 2 inches, this number, you're gonna take that number and divide by 2 to get that base number. Okay, so the larger the swatch, the better here. Then we're gonna take that number and we're gonna feed it into our calculator. Okay, and that's going to determine our cast on. So let me go over and I'll get my calculator. All right, so we're going to feed this into our calculator. I've got a handy dandy interactive calculator right here. You can click on the link in the description below to get yours. There's also a calculation in this pattern I do want to point out. The area here where it says measure around the ball of your feet and it says multiply by a factor of 7, then you multiply that number by 0.85, and it doesn't really explain much other than it accounts for the stretch of the yarn. Now, you can totally use that number more, but the interactive calculator, we already have it programmed with about 10%. So we have 10% ease in, and then there's 15 in the number in here. You can check both numbers by hand. That's totally fine. This one's going to give you something very quick. So just going to go to this part of the blog and scroll down. You're also going to see some measurement charts from toddler baby sizes to child and adult, even some sock yardage charts that gives you loom gauge from extra fine gauge all the way to regular gauge and yarn weight from fingering to worsted. All right, so scroll down all the way to the sock calculator. This is where you're going to put in how many inches wide you measured across. You can also use centimeters. It's totally fine. I've measured 2 inches and I got 11. You can actually put the 2 in here and get 11. It's actually 5.5 when you divide that up, and that's what I had written earlier. And then I'm going to go down here, and this is the measurement around the foot in inches or centimeters, and punch that in. So I had 8.75, which is 8 inches and 3/4. Okay, so 8 3/4 inches. Now, and that can be in centimeters. Then my cast on is automatically determined. It shows me that my cast on is 44 stitches. So I'm going to say cast on 44 stitches. Okay, so I've got that over here, and then it automatically tells me the heel toe, whoops, I'm trying to write 2 words at the same time, heel / toe is 22. Generally, all that is half. When we're doing the wrap and turn style that we're doing, it's half the stitches for cast on. Scroll down a little bit more, and this is stitches to short row on either side of the heel section. That's 7. So this is short row. Okay, that's 7. Okay, that's short row sides. Okay. This number, we're going to talk about this in a moment and give you some more information on it. So you will need this for some math, and I'll tell you why very soon. Okay, but let's go ahead and do this multiplication. Let's say I wanted to use this ease here just to see what it would be. All right, so the calculator here, if I use the number that's right here, it says 7. That would have been the measurement and gauge that they got on their pattern. Okay, so when they made their stitches, they got 7 stitches per inch. So it would be 8.75, which is the ball of the foot, times 7. Okay, that's 61.25. And then if I did times 0.85 for 15% ease, it would be 52. Well, that's not going to work for me because that's way too big according to this other cast on that we got here with our gauge here. So that's 52. If I say and I use my gauge of 5.5, let's say I used 8.75 times 5.5 equals 48.125 times 0.85, I get more like 40.9. Okay, so I know roughly this number, cast on stitches, is good from 44 to even like 40. Okay, so that's just another way that you can determine it and not use that interactive calculator. But you can see the interactive calculator gives you some extra stuff. So let's just continue on. Now that we know this cast on, we want to adjust to the multiple. Okay, and the ribbing. Okay, so we have a ribbing that is a 2 plus 2. It's actually a multiple of 4. Okay, and then we have a multiple of the pattern. The horizontal rib pattern is actually 3 plus 1. Right? So can we do a multiple of 3 plus 1 with 44? All right, so we get our calculator back out. And you want to see if 44 is divisible by the ribbing, which is 4. So it's 11. So it divides evenly, and we're good on ribbing. But we need something that's 3 plus 1. We take our 44, take out the plus 1. The number that's left has to be divisible by 3, or we're not able to use that number. So divided by 3 is 14.333. Well, that's not going to work. All right, well, what is 14 even? Okay, let's just go with that. Okay, 14 repeats times 3, because a repeat is 3, is 42. Plus 1 equals 43. All right, so we had 43, and that number would work, but we have to have something that's also divisible by 4. So 44 is not going to work. All right, we determined that. 14 was our number of repeats before. Okay, that was 14 repeats to get it to 43. 43. All right, let's try 13. All right, 13 times 3 is 39. Plus 1 is 40. So a 3 plus 1, that would be 39 plus the 1 is 40. Is 40 divisible by 4? Yes. Okay, so 40 is going to work. All right, so we know that's a good number, and we're going to have 13 repeats for our multiple. That's really great. Let's say we wanted to figure out the size up or size down. You can totally go from here. So if you're ready to move on, you just move on. I'm going to give you a little bit more information and figuring out the repeats that would work. Okay, so we're going to go up, and I know that I want to do 17 repeats. I've actually done a lot of this math. Plus 1. So we're going to do 17 times 3 equals plus 1 is 52. So 52 is another size to go up. All right. The way that I know that is I kept doing my math where I was trying different repeats. I said, okay, 15 repeats times 3 equals plus 1, and that made 46. 46 isn't divisible by 4, so it wasn't a good number. And then I said, okay, what's 16 repeats times 3 plus 1? 49. That's not divisible by 4 either. And so I had to just keep going up until I found the right one. Okay, I did the same kind of fun playing around, and if I want to go down, I found out that I can do a repeat of 9 repeats plus 1, and that is actually 28. So you can cast on 28. This is more like a child's size 4. And this 52 is more of a women's size 12. This one's more my size, okay? And then my daughter would be this one. This one's women's 9, okay, for the 40. So if you have any of those sizes and you want to work it, that's fine. But that's working with my gauge. So if you got a gauge like this, you could use some of those numbers. And that's just how I got to it. All right, let's move on and talk about repeats. All right, once you've finished number 4, which is just adjusting that multiple and the ribbing, it feels like you're almost ready to go on. Don't do that quite yet. Make sure that you like what you see, and if you like the sample that you made after you washed it and everything, then you can move on to the next section. If not, you might want to change your yarn, or you might want to change your loom, and if that's the case, go back and repeat steps 2 through 4. Then the next section we're going to move on to is working on these rounds and seeing the repeats here. You're going to want to build this out first and determine what you want to do, so that when you finish this sock, you're happy with the sock, you already know it's going to fit, and you'll make the second sock really fast, and you won't have that one sock syndrome so many people have when they don't finish their socks. All right, let's move on to the next section. Pause your video and repeat this area if you need to. See you soon. All right, we're back on our instruction page. I've got my scrap paper. I'm going to be writing down some notes here, and this would be stuff that you would need to do to kind of fill in the blanks for yourself. I'm physically writing it out this way so you can kind of cement it in your head of what's going on. So we're going to talk about the cuff and the leg right now. All right, so we want to make a good fit. Okay, so this is to build the sock. You're going to read the pattern, okay? I know this sounds simple, but read the pattern, all right? Now, number 1, the cuff is 1 inch, okay? It says so right here on number 2, cuff. Work a knit 2, purl 2 pattern until the cuff is 1 inch long. All right, well, that's easy. I know that 7.5, fill in the blank for you, rounds or rows is 1 inch, or your centimeters, okay, is 1 inch. Kind of run out of room there. All right, that little 2 hash mark that means inch. All right, and that's on my swatch, for my swatch. All right, so I knit 8 rounds here, because you can't knit 7.5 rounds. So we're just going to do 8 rounds. That'll make my 1 inch. Now we move on to the leg. Repeat rounds 1 through 3 of horizontal rib pattern 4 times. Then you repeat rounds 1 through 4. And that's a total of 56 rounds, right? So let's kind of put this on here so you can fill in this blank later, and you can scribble one part out and write something else in as you make adjustments. So see right here, the leg is question mark, because we don't know what size that's going to be. Pattern says repeat rounds 1 through 13. Okay, 4 times. We may need to change that number. Okay, that's 4 times plus 4 more rounds. Okay, because we're going to be repeating rounds 1 through 4. That's 4 rounds. All right, so that's 56 rounds. RNDS is the abbreviation. Okay, so if we take the 56 rounds and we divide it by 7.5 rounds per inch, okay, that is equal to, so we have 56 divided by 7.5, that is equal to 7.467, okay, 7.467 inches. Okay, so what that is we're saying just from here, okay, not the cuff, just from here to before the heel, that's 7.46 inches. Well, remember we said we only wanted between 6 and 8 inches for here. So remember, you're going to have an extra inch here, and you're also going to have whatever this heel is here. That's going to be more than you probably want here. So let's try it again, and let's see what it is if we maybe only do 3 repeats of these rows. Okay, let's see what that would be. And just so you know, I already know that this one, you should estimate, they said about 2 inches, but it's actually a different number than that, and I can show you how to get that here in a moment. But for now, let's go ahead and see what it would be with those other rounds. So what do I change? Okay, you can ask, first of all, ask, is that good or not? Okay, and so what do I do to change? Okay, what is 3 repeats, which is 13 times 3, plus 4 rounds, you know, those extra rounds 1 through 3. What is that? So let me just show you on the calculator. It's 13 times 3, which is 39. There we go, 39. So that's 39 plus the 4 is 43. Okay, and then we're going to divide that by 7.5 rounds, because that's my average that I get per inch. Okay, per inch. And that's equal to 5.73, because I've done this before. So we're going to divide that by 7.5, and yeah, you get 5.73 inches. That's closer to that 6, and I know that I'm going to be adding that to my cuff. So that's going to be 6.73 plus a little bit of this heel here. All right. So now we can move on to show the short row, or the for the heel. So we talked about that number before on the previous page, where we said that we had a heel of 22. Now, when we had a heel of 22, that's because our cast on was 44. So now it's actually going to be, because it's 40, this is going to be 20 right here. Okay, so it's half of the number. And this short row side, you are going to have 7, but it's actually going to be divisible just a little bit different. So if we use half of our pegs, so we only use this line and this line, we're going to put 7 on one end of our short row and 7 on the other end in our short row, and then we'll have another number in between. In this case, it's actually 6, but that's how we determine 20. So 7 plus 6 plus 7 is actually equal to the 20. That number, we're going to use that over here. So number 3, sock row calculator. So the sock calculator for short row heel is half the cast on. Pardon my handwriting, that's atrocious. Half the cast on, which is 20 stitches. So that's 40 divided by 2 is 20. That's how I got that number. Okay, so here is 7 stitches for the wrap and turn, and that's also going to work for our German short row. That's fine too. And then we're going to have 6 in the middle. That's what I was talking about a while ago. And then we're going to have 7 more for the wrap and turn, and that's 20. Okay, so that is 28 rounds. Okay, how did I get 28 rounds? Okay, so working back and forth on a short row, this is the way it is. You actually end up working only half. This is actually my starter peg. You work half of your pegs. So I don't work these here and I don't work these here. All right, so I work these 7 here and then these 7 here. So when I work back and forth, and I'm working 7, and then I stop in the middle and I don't do the thing, I end up for half of my short row, I get decreases. Okay, right here, we're decreasing and making this smaller. We're going from big to small, and that is 14 rows. And then when I want to make it big again, that's another 14 rows. So 7 plus 7, that's the 14 rows back and forth. And then that's decreasing, and then I'm increasing again. So that's actually 14 plus 14 equals 28. And that's how come I know. I said rounds, it's actually rows. I don't know why I wrote that, because it's a short row back and forth. Okay, so I have that right there. So 28 rows are happening. If I divide that number, 28, divided by 7.5, because that's how many stitches, or that's how many rows per inch that I get, okay, then I get 3.73. That is the length from here to here, 3.73. So if we're going to do our math, back to our leg here, half that number is the sole or bottom of our foot, and the other half of that number belongs to the leg. And that's how we determine our length here that we want for our full leg. Okay, so half that number is the sole, of the foot, and the other half, bless y'all for reading my handwriting, the other half goes to the leg. Okay, so that's about 1.5 inches if we're rounding up, or rounding down actually. Okay, technically it's 1.86 inches. That's actually the literal amount if you're adding it to it. So if we're going to take 1.86, because it's 3.73 See this 3.73 divided by 2 is 1.86 or 87, okay? Plus this number that we did up here for this leg, this part of the leg, is 5.73, okay? Plus, so this is the leg, this is the half heel, and then this is the 1 inch for the cuff. We get 8.59 inches. So I know that my final leg is going to be 8.59 inches, and that's going to be a nice long sock for my daughter. If I kept those other 13 rounds, which is actually from here to here, if I kept that, the extra repeat, my sock is going to be huge. Okay, and if you want to know what that would have been, how much it would have added, I've got 13 rounds divided by 7.5. Okay, it would have added an extra inch, 1.73 or 75, and almost 2 inches to my length here. That's going to be a really long sock. Well, if I want to make a knee sock, I could totally do that. You could make these into knee socks. So, and I have enough yarn for it, but that's not what we're doing here. So that is how you determine what that fit is. So you're going to use these numbers with the pattern to make the leg fit. And then you would work, so then that's where you would work your short row. You also use those numbers to work on this part here, and that's what we're going to do next. And this, it's going to go real fast from here. So because you're almost done building your sock. So you've got half the heel. This is the sole foot. Okay. You got half of the heel right here. Okay. We know about half the heel is part of the foot length. Okay, 1.86 inches. I'm just writing it on here so we've got it. Okay, number 2, the sole and the instep. Okay, so the sole, simple knit stitches for smoothness. Let's go to the pattern. So we just did the leg. Now we're on to, we did the heel, and we're on to the foot. The foot will be formed by knitting across the sole of the sock, pegs 1 through 25. Well, on ours, it's just half. So you're just working the same part where you did the cuff. Okay, so pretend we worked the cuff, we went back and forth, and then now we're going to be working back and forth. Well, not back and forth, but this part right here is going to be the sole. Now, if you need to get some electrical tape or something that you put, I know this isn't tape, but like if you want to put something right here and right here that says like this is only the bottom of the sock so that you don't accidentally change it, that's what you're going to want to do, whatever you need to do to help yourself. But once you pass beyond this point, this is where, right here and right here is where the top of the sock fits. So like right here, this is where we're talking. So you're going to have this smooth part, and then you're going to have this bumpy part. This is the top part of the foot. So you just worked the cuff. Now you're going to work the first 20 pegs. On mine is 20 pegs. On the pattern it says 25 in a flat knit, or U-knit or classic knit, whichever one you're going to do. And then you're going to work this other pattern. So it says, continue the horizontal rib pattern across the instep of the sock, pegs 26 through 52, which mine are 21 through 40. To repeat horizontal rib pattern starting with rounds 5 through 13. So if you remember, we stopped right here. We went to rounds 1 through 4, which got us that little purl bump here. And then it doubles up right here. And basically you're just continuing rounds 5 through 13 all the way to here. That's really all you're doing. And then you're going to be making your multiples of your rounds in this length here of the sock until you get ready to get the toe part. Okay, and then so it says repeat round 1 through 13 2 times more, working only the top of the foot, pegs 26 through 52. And then pegs 1 through 25 continue in the knit stitch. And then you work rounds 1 through 5 once more on the entire sock. So once you get finished working all the repeats that it says, then you start working all the other rounds right here. All right, let's stop and get some numbers on the page for you. All right. We knit for the smoothness, and then the pattern states, pattern says finish rounds 5, oops, sorry, you can't read that, 5 through 13. All right, that's 9 rounds. Okay, that's equal to 9 rounds. All right, and then work rounds 1 through 13 2 times. Okay, that's times 2. That's 26. 2 times more. That's 26 rounds. Okay, and then work rounds 1 through 5 once more. That's 5 rounds. Okay, so we have 9 rounds that we saw here, plus the 26, plus the 5. That's 40 rounds. Okay, that's what the pattern actually says. Then we're going to divide it by whatever number you get stitches or rounds per inch. Okay, so I've got 7.5 stitches per inch. Wow, I'm tired. Okay, that number we do here. Okay, so 40 divided by 40 divided by 7.5 is 5.33. Sorry. Okay, that's 5.33 inches right there. Okay, so we're going to add whatever number you get, 5.33 is what I got, to that half heel number. Okay, and also the toe. Okay, because you've got this part here, and then you're going to have half of the toe, not the full toe, but half of it. Okay, so you're not adding that the whole 3.72 number we came up with earlier plus the 1.86. You can just say 3.72. That covers half of this one and half of this one. Okay, so the 5.33 is basically the part in between the two. That's really all you're doing. Okay, so we've got 5.33 plus the 1.86 plus the 1.86. All right, for a grand total of 9.05. Okay. Now, we're going to look back to the very first page that we did. The very first page that we did, that is the length that my daughter wanted. Okay. That's the size of her foot. So we go back to that number. She needs 10.25 or 10 1/4. 9 is not going to work. That's not going to work. I need 10.25 inches. Okay, so we're going to need some more length. All right, so earlier we determined how many rounds was going to get us that extra amount. Remember we talked about doing that? So you can just add that number in here very easily. You can say, oh, well, if I add an extra 13 rounds, that's, so 13 rounds divided by 7.5, that's 1.73 inches. Perfect. Let's see if that gets us what we need. So we're going to add 1.73, whoops, that's a 1.73 to my, the 9.05 plus 1.73. Okay, that's going to get me 10.78 inches. Okay, that's definitely going to be long enough for my daughter to wear. Now, that's where you can go in and say, do I want to cut this pattern a little bit short? Or do I want to get it right up to that number? In this case, I think I'm going to go ahead and leave it the same, leave it this way. So I know that when I'm working these rounds, I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to say, nope, I'm going to do 3 rounds. Okay, so then you would just adjust all your notes, or you can write it on your pattern over here. I suggest writing on a separate sheet of paper or making a note and say for this size or for this person or whatever. I would say the measurement, not just the person's name, because what if their feet change? You can mark it in different colors, but if you put it in a different piece of paper that then goes with this pattern, then you're going to have it always and forever if you need to do it again. And you can always make new swatches and change the yarn, because it's going to be, this is only works with the yarn that you did and the loom that you did. All right, so let's go ahead and put this in on here. So we're going to write down what we just talked about. So we look back. These are just for your notes. So if you're taking notes, write this down. Look back at measured foot length. Whoops, I'm running out of space. Foot length, which was 10.25 inches. Okay, and we're going to add one more repeat, which is that 1 through 13 rounds, right? Divided by 7.5, or whatever your number is, was 1.73 inches. Okay, so we have, if you want to do it backwards from what we just did, you can say, okay, well, we needed 10.25, all right, minus, we got 905 here, 9.05, and we needed 1.20, okay? That's how many inches that we needed, okay? And so that works because there's only a difference of 0.53. Okay, there's only a difference of 1/2 inch. And so you can make a change to leave out maybe those last couple of rounds and just go directly after you make the rounds 1 through 3. Maybe you don't do those last 5 rounds and you just start your toe right on there. That's fine. It's up to you. It's your sock. No pattern police is going to say you didn't do those couple of rounds. So that's where you would go from there. All right, so you've got all the things that you need to build your sock, and then you just make the changes on your pattern over here to what you need to do. Are you guys ready to start your pattern? Okay, so I'm not going to show you how to cast on. I think you should already know how to do that. We've got video links down below for you, and you can do the long tail cast on, which I have right here. I'm going to show you how to clean up this loopy edge later on, so it has this nice pretty edge here. I think it looks really nice. It's nice and stretchy still, and it also kind of snaps back. It's elastic and has a really pretty detailed edge. I'm also going to show you how to clean this part up here. This is not quite done. And we are going to make the heel, and then you repeat that after you make the length of your sole and inset, and you're going to repeat it and make the toe. So I'm not going to do this twice, but I will pause and meet you for the bind off and then seaming this part together. Once you have your cast on and your ribbing done, you're going to start the horizontal rib pattern. So let's go over that now. Rounds 1 through 3 are purl 1, knit 2 around the loom, ending each round with a purl. So you're going to end up with this extra stitch at the end, and that's in order to get it up to an even number and work that ribbing. So it will have this little channel of purls here, but once it's actually made into your sock, it's really going to be pretty well hidden. So you need to know that that's going to be something extra on your knitting loom that you need to pay attention to. So it looks like purl, knit 2, purl around the loom. So you get this little broken spot here when it first starts. You've got your ribbing going on, and then you purl, and then knit, knit, purl, knit, knit, purl, knit, knit, and that's how it works up. And then rounds 4 through 5 are purling around the loom. So you end up getting this double line here where the purls are. So you can see 2 lines here. Every time you see a row or round 4, 5, see these double lines here. So these are the purl bumps, okay? And then on rounds 6 through 8, you've got purl 1, knit 2. That's the same thing as up here. So that's 6, 7, 8. So that's 3 rounds. And then you've got another round of purl around the loom. So you can see here's where that 4, 5 are. And then you've got the round 9 in between are these 3 rounds here. So it's the exact same thing. Purl, knit, knit, purl, knit, knit. And then a round for 9 in purl. And then you actually have 3 more. So that's rounds 10 through 12, purl 1, knit 2 around the loom, ending each round with a purl. So that's this one over here, up this part. And then you have round 13, which is purl around the loom. So when I look at this, I can see clearly I started round 1 here. This is 4 and 5, this is 9, and this is 13. You start getting to see this pattern emerge. I had drawn up this little sheet here. This is explaining, so you have rounds 1 through 13 as you work them up. The little dashes are the purl stitch. Okay, so there's a little channel of purls that always lines up with each other, and then you have knit, knit, and then a purl, and then it repeats. Knit, knit, purl, knit, knit, purl, and then this, it represents that extra +1 at the end of your round. So you've gone all the way around and get that. And so that's really what you need to know. And then you just keep repeating according to your pattern here. And you also do the gauge. So your leg repeats rounds 1 through 13 over the horizontal rib pattern, however many times you determine for your gauge. And then you repeat rounds 1 through 4 once more for a total of however many we determine for your gauge. And then you work the heel. So pause your video, and when we come back, we'll work on the heel together. See you soon. The heel or the toe are worked in a technique called short rows, where you're working back and forth instead of working in the round, using half of the number of pegs required for the leg. So only the pegs on one long side and then the short stationary side, not the slider, are worked. So beginning at the starting peg, you're going to work around to the last peg, okay, on the short side. And then you don't work this peg. You're actually going to do something called wrapping. All right, so I'm going to show you what we're going to do here. And then you're going to work back and forth and continue going. This is where that number came in that we talked about in the calculator for the 7 that was on my number. It's 1/3 of this number here. So I'm using 20. So I'm going to put 7 here and 7 here, and then there's going to be 6 that are not worked in between. The best way to do that is you can mark your last peg. So you're going to mark the 20th peg here, half of your number, whatever that number is for your cast on, put that here. All right. And then I'm going to mark 7 pegs in for my part of my short rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. And then place my stitch marker for the peg. And come here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And these are the ones that receive those short rows. The ones in the middle just get worked as normal. There's nothing wrapping on here. All right, so we're going to begin. And I'm not going to show you all the pegs, but this is how we start. We're just going to do your knit stitch, starting at the starter peg, go all the way down until you get to the last peg that's marked. So go ahead and knit yours, pause your video, and I'll meet you there. Right. So for the German short row method, we're, instead of making the wrap and turn where we would lift up this stitch here and place a wrap on it and put this back down, we're going to actually knit that stitch. So go ahead and work it, and then we're going to pull our yarn forward, and we're going to tug on that yarn Okay, and then you can see that there are 2 lines here. Let me hold this way. See these 2 lines here? Okay, that is going to make our wrap for us, and then we're going to work that next stitch. Okay, so that's considered a wrap for the German short row. Now you're just going to work all the way back to the starter peg and do the same thing on the starter peg. So go ahead and knit all the stitches. Pause your video, I'll meet you at the starter peg. All right, we are at the starter peg. Go ahead and work that stitch and then pull back to do the wrap for German row. So, and then we're going to knit the second stitch and move on. So you're just going to continue working back and forth and up until right before the wrapped peg, and then make that one a wrapped peg. So I'm going to work from the starter all the way to this peg here, and then we'll work back to here and make this one a wrap. So you're just going to keep going back and forth until you have got all of them wrapped up to these markers here. All right, pause your video and I'll see you when you get there. Okay, you've now wrapped 2/3 of all of the heel pegs, and I've already pulled back on this one here. This is the one that I ended on. So now you're going to work the unwrapped until you get to the first wrap peg. So do that now. So I'm just leaving that one wrapped. Work this one, that one, keep going. And it'll just be that first marked peg. Oops, that stitch. Okay, so for the German one, we're just going to actually work all these stitches over. Okay, it's gonna be a little tight. Okay, we'll work that over and leave that alone now. We're gonna work on to the next one. And normally we would lift these up and then wrap and turn, go back again, because we're actually going to be expanding and increasing. So we had decreased down. Now we're going to actually be increasing back up again. But we want to wrap and turn this one. And so we're actually going to knit this and then pull back again on these stitches. So it's actually really, really tight. Okay, not to break your yarn though. And then work that next stitch. Okay, and then work the unwrapped until you get to the first wrapped over here, and you're going to do the same. So let's do that. Okay. All right, so this is my first wrap stitch. We're going to knit it a little tight. Okay, and then go on to the next wrap stitch, and now we're increasing. We're going to wrap that one again. So then we pull back, okay, and then we work that other stitch here, the one that was marked. Okay, now we're just going to continue doing what we just did. We're going to work on the unwrapped all the way to this one that has the 3. You're going to knit this one over, and then we're going to work this one and get 3 on it and then go back. So you're essentially doing the same thing. You're just going to widen it until you have got, you're onto the last ones where you've got the 3rd one on there. And then we're actually going to work this stitch here. So meet me back when you get to this point. All right, see you then. Okay, so as you can see, this is the short rows where we had decreased and then we had increased. Okay, so this is sort of like where the heel pocket goes. And then we're on our last stitch, which is wrap. That's one where we had wrapped the 3rd and then gone back. So you're going to work this one now. And I've also, by the way, I've already got this one where I had put the third wrap, where I had knit this one and put an extra wrap here. So anyway, we're back over here on the short side. We're going to knit this stitch, all the wraps, and then go ahead and we're going to wrap this peg on the opposite side. Okay, so knit it and then pull back. And we're going to work one more time toward the starter peg because we want to do the same thing over here and wrap this peg here. All right, so pull back and then we knit this stitch. Okay. And then work our way back. All right, so pause your video and I will meet you back at this point. See you soon. Okay, so we are back to this side where the starter peg is, and we're going to lift those wraps over. And if these are too tight, you can try and do them one at a time. That works too. And then go ahead and do the wrap and turn on this last one here and pulling it back. Okay, and then you're going to start working these stitches as well. And then you're going to continue to go around and make the rest of your sock. Now you can also reinforce these corners here. It's a little harder with the German short row. The way you're supposed to do it is you go to the back of this stitch here, the adjacent stitch that's not part of the heel, and you grab the previously knit stitch from the back, and then you place it on the starter peg. You place it here. Now it's a little harder because when I start doing that, it pulls this off, but you can just be a little bit careful and gently place it. It's very tight, so I may have to work this one again. Yeah, then we pull back. Okay, and then that makes that one a third wrap there. Okay, so now I come back to the starter peg, and we want to continue working in this direction. So we're going to go ahead and knit these over. That one that was the reinforced, and then that peg. I'm sorry, that first stitch, and then we work all the way down until we get to this last peg here. Okay, and you can reinforce it. You can go ahead and do it now, where you grab this last stitch and try and place it here, but you can see that it's really hard. So if you can't get that reinforced, it's okay. It really is okay. So I just reinforce the one that I can on the German short row, which is usually that first one. It's just a bit easier. So I'm going to go ahead and get down to this point and show you how to continue on in this pattern. So notice I am just flat knitting here. This is going to be the sole. Okay, so technically this would be your next round in your pattern, and this is flat knitting or knitting the first half of your stitches. Okay, and then once you get to the second half, that's when you resume your pattern. So just go ahead and knit that. Okay, so we've knit this one, and we're going to come to this last one that has these two wraps, and this is where we continue on with our pattern. Now, because we have we've got to finish out with rounds 5 through 13. This is actually a purl round, so you're just going to come here and purl this and continue on and finish that out. And of course, if you're using this video for something else later, this is just the top of your instep and any kind of decorative stuff, or you can continue working in stockinette for all of these. All right, now that you have got your heel made, we're going to work on the foot, and I'm going to go through the instructions with you, and you're going to have your gauge already done, so you know some of the repeats that we talked about earlier on. The foot is formed by knitting across the sole of the sock in the knit stitch. So this is where my peg 1 is, and then we just continue working the knit stitch over the sole to here. Okay, and then it says repeat the horizontal rib pattern starting with rounds 5 through 13. Okay, so we're going to do rounds 5 through 13. So on these pegs we're just knitting, and then here is 5 through 13. So you can see how we had round 4, and then we stopped and we made our heel, and now we're just picking back up and working that extra round of round 5 here. So there's 2 rounds of purl on top of each other, and you just continue working back and forth, making sure you're only knitting in this area, and then this one is where you pick up the purls. So this is 5 through 13, it ends right here. Then we move on to these directions, repeat rounds 1 through 13 2 times more. In mine, I determined that I need to do it 3 times. So let me show you what that looks like. And it also continues working only the top of the foot in that pattern, and it says pegs 1 through 25 should be continued in the knit stitch. That's what it is. So I stopped 13 here, so 5 through 13, and then I did another one to here, and then another one here, and then my third one ends right here. So the rest of this says work rounds 1 through 5 once more on entire sock. So you can see here that I have started working those rounds once more. You can see how it changes in here just a little bit, and you can really see it here because rounds 4 and 5 stand out as a purl bump. And then you move on to the toe, repeating the heel instructions, and then sew or weave the toe closed. So you're going to work those sections and then work your heel again. And we're going to meet back up at this point here, and I'm going to show you binding off. And then we'll also sew that toe closed together and do a little bit of finishing stuff. So pause your video, maybe back up when you are ready to start working this area here. See you soon. All right, so I've knit this length here and I made my toe. It's right in here. You can see a little pocket. And I've gone ahead and worked this last stitch, went around the corner, did that little reinforcement there, not pulling that old stitch over, but just turning that corner. And I had already come back here and worked past the starter peg and then knit this last stitch in the round and pulled back. So now I've got that last wrap on here. So we are ready to bind off our sock. And so on the first peg here, just go ahead and knit that stitch. And we're just going to do a basic bind off. There are a couple of ones listed and sewing the toe different way with the grafting and invisible stitch. And we're just going to do the invisible stitch. So that requires a basic bind off. So you knit that first stitch, knit the second one, and then move the second one over to the first and knit that stitch and then move it to the next empty peg. Okay, and then you just repeat by knitting the next stitch, moving it onto the first, working the stitch, and moving it over. So just like the basic bind off you've done many times before, that's all you're doing, and you're going to work all the way around to your first peg. When you get to this peg here, you're just going to work these two loops together, and the same thing with this last one. All right, so pause your video, meet me back up at the end. See you soon. All right, we're on the last stitch and we're just going to knit it one more time, and we're going to pull through about 18 inches of tail. Okay, and then pull this off the loom. All right, so we have pulled this off of the loom, and you can see how my stitches are really stretched out. They just don't look right. And this part may actually not be stretched out on, it may not look like this on yours either. It might look more like this. That's because I just stretched it to kind of hand block it a little bit and get it looking a little bit better. So your heel might look like that too. And I just took it and I pinched and I pulled like this, and it kind of lines up my stitches and gets them working. Let me show you what it looks like. And when I get done, it's going to look more like this. Okay, so we just take it and pull. You see how it kind of blooms out that V stitch here? So just pull it like that, and it's sort of unstretching that stitch, because when it's on the loom it just gets really stretched out. All right, and you can do that wherever you need to do. I like to do that before I start sewing this together. It's just easier this way because I can get my hands right up in there. So do that all over on your sock. And then we're actually going to sew this together. This one you're not going to be able to see in the white. So what I did is I finished this toe over here, and I'm going to show this one. You can see that it has a couple of colors in it. We've got the blue and we've got the white coming together. And when I was binding off, this yellow appeared, which is actually going to be easier for me showing you how to sew it together. All right, let's go do that now. All right, so we're going to do the invisible stitch. There's also grafting and the Kitchener stitch, but we're not doing that today. It's going to look like this. It's very invisible. There is a little bit of a bump on the inside, and if you don't like that, you can use the Kitchener or a grafting method. All right, so we're instructed to pull up our yarn from the other side, but before I do that, I want to show you, see how this little stitch is elongated and kind of pulled out? You can do a little bit of fixing with that with the needle here. So I've got a bent tapestry needle, and if I pull on this one, you can see it kind of tightens up this part right here. But if I pull on this one, you can see it coming from actually down here. So there's little V stitches all along right here. Okay, so I'm actually going to pull on this one and see it comes from this one and pull it out and then pull this one out. And so this is actually where I want to be coming from here in a moment. And I'm going to be grabbing this little stitch from below. It was harder to see earlier. So I'm actually going to be grabbing this one here in a moment. So we're going to come up through this other side through the adjacent stitch and come up right up here. Okay. All right, now I'm going to come from the right side, and you can see when I put my my yarn back here, right through that hole where I came up through, you can see this little leg of a stitch and this little leg of a stitch right here. I'm splitting the yarn. It's below where this purl bump is, and it's along this line. So we're going to be pulling it through here and then going over to that area I just showed you, kind of pull back, and you can see 2 legs of a stitch here. This one lines up with this column right here. So we're actually going to be pulling this part. Okay, and when we tighten that up, it should eliminate that little bump there. Okay, so come back over on this side, and when you pull back your yarn a little bit, you can see where it came out. You want to keep it not too tight so that you can see where this came from. So now I'm just going to follow this as a guide. Now it's pretty easy from here. You just have to be able to see well. Go back down through where this one came up, and then you can see this little stitch. So you're going to be grabbing 2 legs of that stitch and then go over here and grab these 2 legs. Okay, so we're not touching the top part, we're going down in between them and grabbing this stitch right there. So pull that. You can see when I pull it a little tighter, you can see how now it's actually coming together. So come over here, and we're going down below this purl bump in between where this little edge of the stitch is, and you can see where it came out last time. And grab our column of stitches, and then grab these stitches over here, and then pull. And see how when I pull that up, it just becomes invisible. Okay, and that's it. So you just keep working across, and you will you come to the end, and I'll meet you there for the end to show you how to finish this up. All right, pause your video and I'll see you soon. Okay, I'm towards the end, and I've thrown my little darning egg in here and then just pushed it, pushing the stitches out so I can really see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to find where I just went out up top and pull through those stitches and come over here and go through these. You can see how having something inside like that can really help you see it well. So I'm just going to kind of pull on my stitches here and tighten that up. See how I can keep it getting it tighter and tighter. So I'm leaving it loose enough so I can see the rest of them here. Okay, so that's going to cinch all of them in. There's this one little last part that gets that's not quite pulled in, and I can do that and pull that on in, and then I can run this one to the back where it came out. I'll just pull it back down through here, and then we'll cinch it up. So this one's not quite pulled tight enough here, and let's go ahead and cinch this in. You can leave them looser like a V. If it's a matching yarn, I'm actually pulling them pretty tight just because I don't want to see this yellow here. But you can actually leave them exposed like in this right here and leave them there. I'm not doing that because it's yellow and I don't really want that yellow in there. So it makes a little bit fuller of a stitch in the back. So Make sure this is how I want it, and we're going to run this on the inside. Pull this through the inside. Okay. So this is what it looks like in here, and then I can run my tail on the inside. And then I like to come back through here and make sure and split one of these stitches here, and then I can cut it and be done with that. All right, so let's go into cleaning up the edge. Okay, if you have an edge you need to be cleaned up, we'll clean that up first, and then I'll show you how to connect this so it looks like it was part of it and doesn't have that little jogged edge. All right. All right, cleaning the edge of a long tail cast on or some kind of loopy cast on. So I'm going to make this edge look more like this edge because it really is looking like this. But sometimes when we have a yarn and a gauge that's really small, it gets this little loopy thing happening. So first I'm going to inspect where my tail is coming from. And I can see that it is right here. And then it links up with this one here. So let me separate and pull this. You can see how these look like a chain link, like that they're together. Okay. And then this one has a loop that's attached to something else. So I want to start here because I'm going to pull out the slack and it's going to work its way this direction. So what I want to do is start kind of playing with some of my yarn with my needle, or you can use a small hook. Okay, so I'm going to start tightening this up. I've got that loop a little bit tighter, and I'm going to pull on this side of it. It looks like it's connected to this lower yarn here, so now this is the loop I want to play with. I want to find where that loop comes from, so I'm going to pull on it like this. Okay, and then I need to find the end of this one, so I'm going to pull on it, and it looks like it belongs over here. So when I pull it out like this, you can see there's the rest of it. So I'm going to keep tugging on it. There we go. And then we're going to come over here. I'm going to find where this one came from. Okay, it came from here, so we're just going to pull on that. And we want to make sure not over tighten. We just want to kind of line it up so it matches the gauge down here. And then this one is coming from here. Okay. And you'll start getting the pattern. And now I suggest that you do this in one sitting. Don't try and come back to it later because you might make a bigger mess. It's just easier. You'll notice that this loop starts getting longer and longer, and that's because you're pulling out so much slack. You're going to be surprised how much slack is in this. So you can see how I can tell where the pattern is going simply because it starts repeating itself. All right, look how much longer this is, and I'm not even gone halfway. All right, so you can see after a couple of these repeats, I've gone through about 10 stitches, and it's nice and stretchy. It looks consistent, and so I'm just going to keep on going and pause your video, meet me back up at this end spot here, and we'll finish it off together. All right, see you soon. Okay, so you can see I've got quite the loop going on here, and I've gotten all the way to my tail, and I'm going to pull this slack out here. Let's see, I just did that one. Yeah. Got myself lost for a second. All right, pull this one. Okay, and then now when I tug on this part that has the strand here, I can see that that loop is coming from here. And then this is a little bit tricky because I had pulled that tight earlier, so we may need to do a little bit of a little bit of tugging and things. Let me loosen up this knot here. A sharper needle will work. I just don't like to use a sharper needle because I don't want to split it. I don't want to split the yarn there. Okay. So I want to make sure that I'm pulling on the loop and not the end here. Okay, so I'm going to pull this loop here. And now we want to get this part done. So we need to get this part of this knot is this loop. There we go. And now we're going to pull on that. You see how in the end it gets a little more tedious. And then now I can start pulling on this one. Right, so it's all cinched up, and now we want to connect them. You see how this is now not so loopy. It still retains its elasticity. It looks very nice with the ribbing, and now we've got this giant strand here. So we want to connect these two pieces. Go ahead and put on our tapestry needle. And you've got all these little lines up in here. And on the sock, it might be a little hard to determine this, but you're basically going to be coming from the inside and connecting. So you've got this knit stitch here, and you're going to go around to where the purl stitch is, and you're just going to be going through this this top part of this V and go around, and then go back on through here, and you're creating a new little chain in between there. So it actually created a little loop to connect the chains. And then you can flip your sock inside out a little bit and then work your way through this ribbing here. I like to put it up through this stitch, and then we're going to whip around and go through the side of the stitch, whip around and go through the next side. And we're just going around through the ribbing. And what that does is it keeps the ribbing nice and stretchy so that you don't have any issues with it being too tight. Okay, so when I get up to that point, I'm just going to split my yarn through this last one, and then I can cut it. Or you can keep going through to the end. I'm sorry, further inside. Okay, I'm going to pull on it and go ahead and clip. And there you have it, a nice completed sock. All right, well, I'm going to seam up my other one and I'll be done. I hope you enjoyed that sock video. I'd love to hear your comments down below. And don't forget, we are also on Instagram at GoodKnitKisses. I love to see your socks and who are you making them for. Be sure and subscribe so you get our videos every Friday when they come out. I can't wait to see you on our next video. See you then.
Thanks for joining us today, where we help you stitch your love and love your stitches. See you again soon.